Okay. So it being 6 o'clock, we'll bring this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. And I guess we'll start with approval of the meeting minutes from December 17th.
Motion for that, for the approval.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Not from me. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Okay, time for some discussion. First, we'll start with the exciting borrowing of 2021 and the good news there.
Sure, I'll share my screen. We just got the information today. The bid was on Thursday. Let's see. All right. Why can't I? Oh, there it is. It's not what I wanted.
In there somewhere.
Yeah, it's here somewhere. It's just not coming up for me. Let's see. There we go. Do you see the bond issue?
Yep,
Oh,
All right. Make it a little bit smaller. It's a little big there.
there we go.
Okay, so on Thursday there was a it's actually a bank loan, which is the first one that I can remember. If you borrowed less than $10 million or less, you can either do a bank loan or a bond issue. Most of the time, the rate is better to do a bond issue. There's a lot of other costs, but the banks usually can't compete with it. But the rates are so low right now, and the availability of funds. So actually, we decided to try a bank loan first, and if we didn't receive positive results, we'd look at the bond issue. This was great. I was watching the bids come, or the proposals come in, and I'll share that page with you on Thursday, and you can see look at the rates. I mean, it was great. I saw the 105s coming in. I'm like, yes. So it ended up with key government financing being the best because there's no bank fees, and actually, after you can actually pay it off after a year, of course, if you had the money to do that with no penalty. So it's all or none, though. You can't pay part of it; you have to pay the whole thing. So they were the successful bidders on this, and like I said, this is a draft because there's a couple little changes. There's a date change; it has to be in it. I did send you the document a little bit earlier today after I received it. I just want to point out a few things. As you know, it's a refunding of the 2013 and most of the 2016, which is, let me get a page 3 and 4. Hold on. So this is the 2013, which will be fully refunded. And you can see the rates that we thought they were great rates when we borrowed those funds. 2016, again, you see those rates, which were great at the time. Now, when we get to the refunding of the 16, we wanted to stay at the $10 million mark to one. If it was a bond issue, it would have a 5-year call, like on our other issues. That's why we try to stay at 10 million. Or if it's a bank loan, it has to be 10 million, less than 10 million. So because of that, we can't quite refund all the 2016 bonds. So there will be one payment of $30,000, basically, or basically $35,000 to pay yet on this issue, but that will be paid November of 21. So we'll wrap that one up next year, or at least that portion of it. And then, I apologize if you want me to slow down, I can. This will be our new series of 2021. You can see here that we will have in fiscal year 2021, this year, we'll have a savings of $78,000 that we won't be paying. And then next year, we will save $169,000 over what we would have paid otherwise. So in the end, down here, the net savings is $253,000. Over time, there's some small savings, but most of that we're taking this year and next year. Now, which is great. And you can see that's the net savings because we already took out the state share from net savings. So overall, I think it was great. I did ask Jamie, is there any chance to get below 1? And she goes, only if you have the top rating and you're only borrowing for like 3 years. So
Yeah.
obviously that's not the case. So, but she said they felt very good about the proposals. And then here's our costs, which is the costs are actually lower because I don't have to go through a bond rating and all those items. So it's a greater savings to the district. Settlement will be on it'll be on the board agenda for June 28th to approve. And then settlement will be on March 4th.
You mean February 28th?
No, January 28th.
January.
Workshop. It's a workshop.
Okay.
Starts with a J.
Yep.
Um,
So that bond is done then, that bond would be done in 2029?
Yeah, there's no extension of the bond issues. As you can see, it's like, yes, 2029. So it's great. We kept the timing. We didn't want to increase the time of the bonds. We want to just try to save money and keep our current structure so that, you know, in the future, if you need to borrow funds, we didn't change at the time period when you have the most availability.
Okay. That's awesome, by the way. That's amazing. And I'm really happy we did that.
Yeah, I'm really glad it came through the way it did. Timing is good. We've been fortunate in our timing and borrowings, here, and as you can see, the arbitrage yields is basically 1.05.
Excellent.
So any other questions on this issue? Like I said, it's a little different because it's a bank loan, but you have that document in your attachments, and you can look at it. It's a draft because there is a date in here that's wrong, but that doesn't matter. It's the date was in the original proposal, so we're good. We should be very good. All right.
Yeah, that's terrific. I saw that today and I was like, yes, that's even better than we thought.
I know, that was great.
By a lot.
Yeah.
Terrific. Ugh. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? No? Okay. So I guess we're ready to move on to tax collection program.
Okay, this is more of a discussion. I did send you a little brochure on the Berks program, Berks County IU. Currently, the system we've had since mid-90s. So I have a lot of historical data on our current system, but it's antiquated. We're the only one now using the program. It's not well supported. We had a lot of problems with it this year just because of the lack of support for the software. My director of technology would love me to get rid of the 400 because it's the only thing on it, which he's correct. I need to move away from it. So since it's not working well, we've had problems, we're the only ones on it, and I need to get rid of the 400. It's kind of pushing me to make a change. We looked at the Berks County IU program probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it wasn't a web-based system then, which it is today. It has drastically improved, and it's used county-wide by Berks County and many districts, and it's actually used in districts. I know Park Valley is using it for real estate. So it's a really good, it's a good program. I talked to our tax collectors Thursday early evening. Dan was with me and my person who does taxes, and introduced them to the program. There were some questions we still need to have answered. They would like to know, I would like them to also use that program, which the availability is there. Their issue, of course, is historical data because the programs they have now, which are, there's 7 tax collectors and there's at least 3 using different programs. So, but they have historical information, and that historical information lets them do tax search. We're not involved in tax search, but they need to do it. And that information is stored in their current program. We are investigating with Berks County whether we could load up historical data. We have it on our system, so it's not like I would have to, retrieve it from their systems for at least districts' real estate taxes. We could put it, we could just access it from our system. So we'll have to see how that goes. We're not sure, I'm just want to introduce it to you because would like to move forward on something different since our program is having issues. This is the one that looks good. It also has per capita and a census package to it if we go that route. But something else interesting happened during that phone call. The tax collectors really don't like collecting the per capita tax. As many of you heard, some people refer to it as a nuisance tax or whatever. So I took the opportunity to ask them if they wanted to give it up, and I did not hear any no's. Dan can verify that for me. There were several definite positives, and I said, so you would be willing to give up the per capita? And the reason I was asking that question, I'd be look at doing it differently. If they would deputize a district for the collection of the per capita, we would just go down a different route. I've already investigated that since Thursday evening. There could be a savings to the district if the tax collectors are willing to do that. I would need to contact the municipalities, which I haven't done because this is just brand new, and actually be sure the tax collectors want to deputize the district to make that collection. I've talked to our solicitor. I already have a document to have the district be able to do that if the tax collectors are so inclined. Again, pricing it out, it will actually be a cost savings to the district. So I will reach out. That's yet to come. I will need to reach out to the tax collectors and the municipalities to get, to see if they would be okay with that. The other piece to that is, though, the reason I met with them is this is the time, an opportunity. We pass a resolution. We pass every 4 years and looking at the compensation paid for the collection of taxes. So they did not request an increase in collection, which their rate is very fair. So I was glad to hear that. They had two bigger issues, not big issues, I would say, but one is in the current resolution, we have the collection of the per capita to end at the end of March. That was at the request of the tax collectors several years back when they were going to rerun again. It used to be December. They asked us to wait, which we could because we don't send to Berkheimer until later. But they wanted us to delay the collection up until March because a lot of times people are filing their taxes, which they're probably doing right now, and getting their W-2s. And all of a sudden, this $10, $15 bill appears in their paperwork because they just pushed it off because it's not a large bill. So they felt that it was important to extend that timeline, which we did, to the end of March. I will say unequivocally that they've changed their mind. They do not want to be collecting it in January, February, or March. They want it to end December, which is a decision, for the committee to recommend and put in the new resolution, whether we move back to a December date, which would match the real estate. So that's.
Can I ask you a question real quick? I'm kind of confused. So they don't want to do the per capita, but if they do the per capita, then they want to move it?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I was understanding. But they don't really want to do it at all.
Correct.
So if they didn't do it, would you like the date, or whoever would be in charge, would you want to move the date?
I don't, if we want to go the route that I'm looking at, it doesn't matter. I think it would be a decision of the committee. March is fine. I don't see any problem with that. For them, they're saying they're not receiving a lot of collections, and it's just nuisance tax. It's just a nuisance, for them to have to keep their books open and wait to collect those taxes. I'm fine with it being March. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But we're looking at the resolution for the next 4 years, and this was a request if they collected the taxes that it would be December. It wasn't until after that discussion that it came up that they didn't even want to collect it.
Okay, I guess that's why I was a little confused. I was like, why were they making a deal about this if they don't even want to do it? But the one preceded the other. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So I wish I had, I wish I had more time before this meeting to do some more investigating to see if they're serious about not collecting, which is fine. I'd be willing to have them deputize the district. Now, talking to the solicitor, we could do it if they're interested for 1 year, and then the resolution would be written in such a way to allow us that option for them to, we have to write in such a way that we would be able to do it. But as a tax collector, let's say new tax collectors are elected and they want to collect it, I can't really reduce the rate to a point, if they're collecting it, to make that change unless there's a lot of data provided. So he suggested we would leave it as is if they're going to collect it, but give the opportunity to deputize the school district to do it if they chose not to. Again, I still need to contact municipalities. Their $5 piece is on our bill. Actually, when I spoke to, looking at a different collection method, the person I was talking to said they would bill the municipality for their part. And I thought, well, we have never billed the municipality for actually printing the bills and submitting it on the bills that we send out. So that's always an option. I'm not suggesting that we change that at this point, but just to know that that's true. We are, part of it's municipal and part of the school district.
So I just have a quick question too. I have 2 questions. So the first one is, so in other words, the district would be the one collecting the money if we switched it. If the
Or we would,
do it, tax collectors.
we would probably put that out to a third party to make
Okay.
that collection. And that's what I was investigating.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it would be actually somebody at the district or, okay, well, that makes sense. My second question is the new software, does that cost the tax collectors anything?
No,
Oh, good, even better.
yeah, there's
Okay.
no cost to them. And if they decide to use it, it's web-based and we have access. There's access for 5, so we have to pay a little extra for additional access, but that's fine. I'd be willing to do that because it would save time on the district, my administrative support person who works with the tax collectors. It would save some time there that we could utilize in a different way. So I would definitely try to do everything I can to encourage them to use our system once we were underway. And there's training provided. Now, the one additional cost this year is the program obviously doesn't have our tax calculation as part of it. But there's
The old STEM ratio.
exactly. There's a one-time fee to create that, to make that adjustment, which they can do, and they've already investigated, and we've already worked that out. So
Good.
that would not be an issue.
Significant cost to that. I'm sorry. For
Yeah,
them to add
well,
that.
it's a little over $3,000 to do that, but it's a once and done.
Okay.
Now, for the historical data, if I can just say real fast, is there a way that they can import that historical data or at least point the program to their historical data so that
Well,
they can
that's what
access it if necessary?
We are going to investigate whether they can bring that data in from what we have. I mean, I would love to do that.
I'd imagine that they should be able to export at least to some format and then always, go back and point it somewhere else, if not necessarily import it into the cloud-based storage that they'll be using,
Right.
unless you're using local storage for that.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Judy, you have any questions?
Nope, not on that.
Okay. All right, good. Keith, anything else? Anyone else?
Melanie, I was just going to mention, you were asking if it was a cost to the tax collector. It actually could be a savings if they were to migrate to this piece of software altogether. They wouldn't have to purchase their own program as they do now. So they could actually save a couple of dollars
Okay,
in this direction. So it could be beneficial for both parties.
good. And are they, maybe this is a discussion for another time, but, oh, well, never mind. It's actually the next item, so I'll just wait. I just realized what the next item was, so that was my question. Okay,
So,
so I mean, I think it's a great idea. If it saves the district, if, you want to go ahead and explore that, I'm fine with that. I
okay.
think it's a really good idea.
Now, we are, like I said, tax collectors will be running in this election, not for this coming tax period, but for the following tax period. And that's why we need to pass a resolution. I just wanted to raise, one was the per capita date, which, we can leave as March 31st, or like I said, it came up after, came up not collecting it after our discussion. Whether you want to leave it at March 31st or change it to December if if they're collecting it, I can only put one date in there. So either leave it at March and say you need to collect it until March, or change it till December and make it regardless of end of December date.
I personally don't have an issue with leaving it in March,
Okay,
because I have a feeling we'll offload it from them, which, that makes sense to me. So it's going to save us money and save them heartache. That's all right.
the other item that's in this agreement is something that came up maybe last month or so. We have the ability, we provide the ability for people to apply for exemptions. The due date is November 15th.
Mhm.
I think the due date's fine, but if there's any thought to changing that, you have to be careful though. Well, now that it's March, you could extend the due date a little bit, but I wouldn't extend it too far, because remember, they're paying real estate taxes are due the end of December. A lot of taxes, most of them will be paid by the end of December. So I'd be careful in extending it much later than November 15th. So I just wonder the thoughts of the group. If there's any, remember, it comes out in July. So it does give them July, August, September, October, until the
It's
middle
only
of December.
$15. Yeah, it's just $15. So,
Correct.
yeah. I think, based on a little bit of history we just had, more importantly than the date, is there a way for us to identify those that should be getting exemptions that we already can figure out?
Well, the problem is their income level by law has to be less than $10,000. And we don't know that. If they have income from other sources or qualify for like disability or something somewhere, that's not something we have access to. We could find out earned income, but other than that, we just don't have access to that.
All right, because I'd like to figure out a way, some way to make sure that everybody sees that you can do that.
That's what I was just going to say. Is there some way that we can have like something inserted in the bill that says if you don't make $10,000, you can file for exemption? Because I never noticed that. I paid it for my daughter.
So did I. Paid it for both my kids.
Yes, if it's there, it must be really tiny print, or I'm just oblivious. But maybe so to avoid the issue, instead of extending how long you can apply for a waiver, we just make sure that we have some kind of insert or something when you send the bill that says, hey, if you can be exempt, here's how you file a waiver to be exempt. It looks like I almost said Diane. Dana want to chime in here.
Yeah, Dana, go for it. What do you got?
Well, I just don't think it should be mysterious. It shouldn't be only people in the know that can take advantage of the exemption. It should be clearly published somehow, some way, either with a stuffer to the bill or right on the bill itself. I've always been able to take advantage of it. I don't think I've ever paid a tax for any of my kids, but I have a special situation and it shouldn't be that way.
Right. You do have somebody in the know in your family.
Well, I can look at that, whether it could be something that's placed on the bill or somehow, some other way, or we could have Bradley put it in the paper free of charge, right, Bradley?
That's a good thing. Yep.
So we can look at, I'll see what I can do to at least get that word out there. Maybe too with the school, we can do something, through the school for, some of those that we, like you said, that maybe are age appropriate, that could just be informed that that's available.
Yep. Maybe that new software will see it, at least for the kids anyway.
Right.
But I don't think we need to necessarily change the date for the waiver. I think if we just let people know that they can even apply for a waiver and how to do it, that's going to get more, that's going to be more productive than changing, it's just kicking the can down the road and then charging them a late fee anyway because they didn't know.
Sure.
The day will only confuse people. You know, it's more a matter of educating the people that we need to get out there. Maybe we could insert a flyer in the myriad of documentation we send out at the beginning of the school year or something.
Yeah,
Just another-
and that's actually a good idea. I'll look at some way we can do it besides even
Like
on
when
the
we're
bill.
re-registering kids or something like that, something in there, just a little notice.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
All right, well, we have
That's
time to
why-
think about that, right? They don't
Right.
go out until February?
Well, the bills will go out July,
Oh, July,
and
okay.
then we just need to pass the resolution that governs the compensation for in February. So I'll work with David Kahn to look at the language regarding the per capita, and I'll reach out, to the municipalities regarding the per capita also to see if they truly want to relinquish that. And also if that's something we can put as an option in. I can't make it mandatory, according to David, in the resolution for the next 4 years. But if we have the same tax collectors, which I believe they're all running, and I don't know if maybe someone will run against them, I have no idea. But if this is really the way they feel, then it would be in place for the following 4 years also. So we'll see.
Okay. All right.
But thank you.
Yep.
I thought that would be a lot more difficult.
We're all about making things easier, aren't we?
We tried.
So
Maybe.
have we officially moved on then to the third thing, which is the actual resolution? It
Yes.
seemed like we kind of segued in there, did we? Okay. Could you explain section 5 to me? I'm sorry, I read it about 100 times and I just don't really understand it. This is not my forte. Taxes, not good.
That's why I put you on finance so you could hear it all.
Well, there's other parts of finance I get, but like, I just didn't understand, like, it was, talking about issuing credits back to them and stuff. And I just really didn't understand the process. So could you give like a,
Sure.
section 5 for dummies?
No, good question. So what happens is tax collectors collect the real estate up until the end of December. The last 2 weeks in December, it has to be either a certified check or whatever. It has to be postmarked, which this year was different because, as you probably know, the mail has been delayed. We were getting invoices that were a month old here at the district. So the tax collectors waited to submit their reports for December because they were still getting postmarked as of December 31st. After they process all the taxes collected by the end of 31st, then they have to come to a final reconciliation of taxes collected and those are uncollected. Now we run reports every month and we compare it to what they submit to us because they must submit a monthly report to us, and that's somewhere in here too by the 10th of the month, and that's by law, which also has to go to the state. So that report is submitted each month, is verified by us, but at the end of the year, the most important one is filing for all the collected taxes. So they're given credit for all the taxes that are collected and paid over to the district. At that point, a report is generated of uncollected taxes and goes to lien, and that's by law. So it goes to the County Delinquent Tax Bureau, or the Upper Perk School District uses Portnoy to collect those taxes, and many districts do. Years ago, we used the county, and then they went to a third party, and then they went back to the county, so there was a lot of changing over. But we've used Portnoy for a number of years now, and it's been very successful, and it's no increase really cost. The costs are relatively the same to the taxpayer who's been delinquent. Plus, Portnoy will make if there's a hardship, they'll work with the person. So at that point, but around January 14th or a little bit later, because this year it's a little later because they have to clean up their duplicates and they have to submit to the county. They have to go down to the county to settle up for their county and municipal taxes. And then they settle up with the school district so we can settle with Portnoy. So at that point, we submit the uncollected taxes to Portnoy, and then they do the collection, and the taxpayer's responsibility is over for that year. They are completely exonerated from collecting any more taxes, and they can't. When we file those uncollected, some of them will be partials because you're allowed to pay, you can pay in installments. So sometimes someone will pay 2 installments and only be 1 installment that's left, or there's interim taxes that were issued either once as any taxes in the delinquent period, it can go to tax claim. So delinquency occurs, you have discount for 60 days, you have a net for 60 days. I'm not sure I understand. That's my watch. A net for 60 days, and then after that, it goes to delinquency. So at that point, we could actually file any interims that were issued in July or August and file the liens for not just the real estate, the regular taxes, but the interims also. So at that point, the collection of those taxes by the tax collector is over. They're no longer responsible. They wipe their slate clean and they move forward. The only thing they could possibly have left in real estate are interims that are issued later during the year because they are issued every month. Does that help? Oh, there is one thing.
A little bit.
Yeah, once it goes to delinquency, 5% is paid to the county whether they collect it or not. That's just the requirement. They add an extra 5%. So even though we go through Portnoy, that 5% still has to be remitted to the county. So 5% is added right on the top of those delinquent taxes.
I think now that you've said all that, when I go back and reread that paragraph, it'll make more sense.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yep, sure.
And also, how do the tax collectors get paid? Like I just, so that everyone understands.
Sure. So earlier in the year, like July and August, you'll see some dates in here. We pay them like every other week because they'll submit, they're collecting a lot of taxes. So they're paid per bill or per installment. So when they submit their reports or remittances to us, my administrative assistant keeps track of that and then keeps a tally of how many bills were submitted. And then that goes to payroll. She'll submit, let's say Marlboro submitted 500 real estate bills, 500 times 375 because they were the full bills. That amount will be paid to the tax collector that next pay period. Okay. So we identify the pays, and then of course, now it gets to be the slow time of the year. When it does that, we spread out the payments because I don't really want to be issuing a payroll check for a couple dollars. So we work with them over the years to come up with the dates that will work for them. Obviously, their pay is great in like November for the October collections, or at the end of the discount period after August or September, November. That's when they'll receive most of their compensation.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of figured that's how it worked, just making sure. Anybody have any more
flat
questions?
amount per bill or a percentage of the bill?
It's amount per bill.
Did they ask for any increase?
They did not.
Okay.
And in comparing them with districts that I saw rates for were comparable.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Any more questions about that? All right. Well, then I guess we're going to move on to the ever popular 1920 single audit.
Yes. So, every year we used to, before we had a finance committee, Mr. Gorman used to present to the board, just go over the audit report. The audit report is already up on Emma, which has to be done by the end of December. I sent you guys an electronic copy. Of course, I have your hard copy here for when we ever see each other. So, and it's something that the board acknowledges at a board meeting. And as you know, right now we're going through the normal cycle of the state audit. And that was one of the questions that they asked us, whether the board actually sees our audit, which you do, and basically just confirms and is it reviewed? And we said, for a number of years it was reviewed at a regular, and they're fine with all that. They just want to make sure that you're aware that there is an audit and that you have access to it. So I just want to point out some important pieces in the audit itself. The audit has a couple areas that if there were, issues with the district is, if there was any significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, which are considered, that some things need to be changed, or there's control deficiencies also. And that's on page 3, it defines what a control deficiency is. So it's an internal control exists when design or operation of control does not allow management employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent or detect and correct misstatements on a timely basis. So oftentimes there's going to be something, because there's thousands and thousands of entries and that occur in the financial end. There are a few items that were listed. One was in food service, which was because basically a journal entry needed to be done at the year end or at the beginning of the following year that we needed to do, which has since been corrected. And then it talks about the taxes. You have many areas in tax revenues. We have 7 municipalities. We have, obviously, in 7 per capita accounts and 7 real estate accounts, and then 7 really transfer, and a lot of, because of the multiple municipalities, really doesn't have any effect that it goes in if as long as it's in the right category, which they're all using in the right category. It's just identifying them to different pockets, being Marlboro, Upper Hanover, and so forth. And then federal grants. So federal grant expenditures, the reports are fine. It just, the coding we just need to review our coding area. So overall, I would say there was no big issues with the financing, which is great. There's some minor things that we have to just keep ahead of, but in the scheme of things and the multitude of entries that are done, and Dan does a lot of work on the financials, that I think overall is a very good audit. Now, here are the things I really want to point out. If you have the audit open, I know you have copies, and it's out on Emma too, or I could probably bring it up, but let me talk about food service. So food service this year lost $111,000. And you may say, okay, well, remember, and this was from 1920. So starting in March, there was no food service provided except our grab and go. And for a while, it didn't start right away. But the state required us to pay 100% of the wages, even though individuals weren't working. So if you look at it, so you had most of March, April, May, and half of June, where we had no income from students who would have normally purchased lunch, but yet we had to pay all the staff for the duties they would normally perform during that time. So, I have to applaud Paula, because in the prior year, we actually finally were moving back into the black. We had a savings or a profit income of $93,000 after several years of losses. I mean, Paula really turned some things around and was really created an efficient operation and maximized on our subsidies. But last year, there's really nothing we could do. I mean, at some point, in districts where if there's a loss in certain area, the district kind of bails them out. They still have a positive balance. And we hope, and this year we will, I'm not sure where it's going to turn out. I would say to you, we're doing the grab and go. We're not paying the same level of salaries. Of course, our unemployment is greatly increased, but I can't say we're gonna make any money because we're just starting, we did the grab and go, which is great because we get reimbursed. We get our subsidies for doing that. And, you know, we really want to encourage people to take advantage of it. We've tried and I think it has basically leveled out. And then we just started today. Obviously, today is not a good measure of what the future will be in students purchasing meals. It was very light today, but it is day one. It is still COVID. We are in hybrid. So we just have to recognize that and hope and see if it picks up in the next 2 weeks, or we have.
Sandy, I do want to share that tomorrow is grilled cheese at most of the elementaries. So I imagine the
Perfect.
sales will be through the roof because I double checked when I was there today. Specifically, Marlboro has grilled cheese and hot dogs. So they told me to step back. They're going to go to black tomorrow.
All right.
Free for all.
That's great. I'm glad Paula was listening at that board meeting.
Yeah, I'll
Mhm.
take full credit for that.
Okay.
Get a couple to go.
Yeah, there we go. We'll start having takeouts. How's that?
Perfect.
Listen, I have my favorite school lunch, and it comes up from time to time. But I'll get an email from one of the cafeteria workers that'll be like, "Hey, today's the day."
Yep.
As I said, when I worked at Marlboro, even if I brought a lunch, if I found out it was the grilled cheese day, I always got grilled cheese. I was be like, okay, I have to save this lunch for tomorrow. It really is the best lunch in Marlboro.
Oh, man.
We're gonna have to put on as a daily special or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's great. So moving onward into the report on 33, there is a page listing, you know, the revenues as far as what was received, what was budgeted. We exceeded the amount that was budgeted in local, and that's mostly the real estate was at a higher percentage than we budgeted for, which is great. I mean, people were obviously paying their bills. Now remember, that was before COVID because most of that was received by December, would have been received by December. The earned income tax was up. Transfer tax was up a little more than budgeted. So we recognize a greater revenue source in the local. State was up also. Transportation was higher than estimated, and the rentals were higher because we can only estimate what we know we're going to receive from the state, and when we don't know, when they have yet to approve some of our PlanCon documents, we don't know if we'll receive it in that year. For example, the auditors pointed out to us the one year, they said, hey, you didn't receive any bond reimbursement. I said, that's because the state didn't allocate any and they waited till the following year and did it through a loan program and then paid us, you know, for 2 years in 1 year. So we're really dependent on that reimbursement from the state and what is budgeted and allocated. So with that, moving forward on the bond issues, there's a lot of good information in your audit report. Starting on page 54, it identifies all the bond issues and it has a recap on page 59. So the recap shows you all your existing debt, principal, interest, and anything else that's related to the bond issues. I think I look at that as a valuable page in planning forward. So you know when your bond issues are ending, what the payment structure is, and then if you're planning for the future, any construction, renovations, additions, and so forth if needed. Excuse me. There's also a page in there that identifies all the tax collection for the municipality, for the 7 municipalities. And there you can see what was collected in the real estate, what was turned over to the delinquent tax collector, what the totals were. So you can look at the percentages collected. And I think it's, you know, valuable because you look at each municipality individually, what the duplicate was, and then what was actually collected for them. Now, my favorite I find valuable is near the end of the audit. It's in the extra financial documents and starts on page 91. And it really breaks out what's budgeted and what's actual and the variance by the breakdown of the function code. So if you're looking at the revenue codes and it's broken out, it's not just the total 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. It breaks down all the 6,000s, the 7,000s, the 8,000s, and then you get to the expenditures and it breaks out all the major functions. So, well, I should say all the function codes, not just a major function. So it's by major function and then all the individual function codes. So there you can see the budgeted, where the actual was, and then where money was left over that, you know, would go into the fund balance. Now, last year obviously was different because we had a lot of expenditures that we didn't realize because of COVID. You know, our transportation, we paid a portion, a major portion, but then remember all the extras were not paid. For example, sports trips and those items, or field trips. There were none of that was paid, which was, you know, a savings to the budget, but not a savings we really wanted. We really wanted the kids to experience those types of things. So you'll see, you know, there was a definite fund balance left in last year, but it was mostly a lot of items that obviously didn't occur. The other part is we were able to, you know, when we have bond refundings, as you can see, just from the one we're doing now, there's always a savings there, which really helps with the budget. We also saved money last year. If you remember, we did a premium holiday for benefits. So we saved for a full month of benefits because of funds that we had in reserve that we could afford to do that. So there's a number of items we put in place to create savings, and then with COVID created some additional savings, which helped with the fund balance. And then that fund balance is going to be utilized, as you can see, for things moving forward, either in next year's budget, plus we move some funds to capital because we have our Giza project. When we did our borrowing for the middle school project, we borrowed what was said to be the estimate of the cost of that building during the bid procedures and the final bids, and then savings that we recognized throughout that project saved us several $1 million. Those dollars will now go into the Giza project, which is great because, you know, often with Giza's you borrow funds. We did not need to borrow funds. We were able to move forward on that project with the funds that we have available. Obviously, we know we have some other items in the fire as far as a playground that will be, you know, that will tax some of our capital funds. And then we're looking at, you know, whatever costs will be for kindergarten and some other items that will be in another phase of the Giza. So there's a lot of items that you've put in place for future planning that gives us the ability to do some of the things that we're moving forward with, which mirrors over into facilities. So
Thursday.
yes, Thursday. So we'll go further into that. So I mean, if you have, I don't know how much of an opportunity you've had to go through the document. There's a lot of data. It's really good data because it gives some information about the district, you know, our number of our enrollment, our square miles, a little bit about the district itself, and just a lot of other data regarding retirement and issues and just a good document to have, which is publicly listed out there on Emma with additional documents on some of our operating information, more our 10 largest taxpayers, student information and projections. That is all listed out there on the site. Plus, it's very important to keep that site up to date because when we're doing a borrowing, that's the first thing they go to, the borrowers. It's our continuing disclosure. It discloses our bond issues, and it discloses information on the district itself, which has allowed us to keep a really positive bond rating for our size district.
And it's a really fun read if you have lots of coffee. That really is a good read, actually. It's I've read the last 3, so this is number 4, although I haven't finished reading it yet. I did do the beginning part, and we'll finish it.
I don't know, Dan, if you have anything else you want to say about our audit, or if you have questions, ask Dan.
Yep.
I think, Sandy, I think that touched on, a lot of the good points, and you pointed out your favorite pages of the audit, which I'm sure that the members are appreciative of. I think the budget to actual, I agree with Sandy, that is important. It's kind of a good thing to look at and say, okay, so where did we end up relative to the budget? And then really the ultimate question is then why? Why did it happen? What caused it? And whether it was COVID, whether it was a bond refunding or some other matter, that kind of all is something that we look at as we move forward into budgeting for the next year.
Yeah, speaking of budgeting for next year, when does the big book come available? Or-
I'm working on it.
Okay,
I'm working on it. Yeah, I'm starting to, I have some of the items put together, but I still have work to do. There's a lot of items we're looking at that, going into next year. We also, received information on the grant for the ESSER grant. They encourage you to be careful though, to not spend it on ongoing expenditures because it's one-time money. So it's going to be carefully planned. I know Kim plays a big part, and Andrea, Dr. Roach, in looking at how we're going to spend that money on expenditures for next year, because it's a sizable amount, but we have to recognize that that money won't be there the following year. So you can't count on it to, for ongoing expenditures. The other thing we have to look at, we have things we put in place next year, but I'm not sure. February 4th, I think. Well, the state budget will be coming out soon, and we will have a webinar to go over what that is. I don't anticipate the state increasing our subsidy with dealing with COVID and issues they had to deal with statewide. So we'll see. We'll know better then as far as what we can support in expenditures. I think that will. I'm not expecting any increases, and then that's where we're going. That's where we're going at this point. Let's just hope there's no decreases. The other item is earned income tax. As we try to stay ahead of that, projecting that forward, there was projected decreases in that moving forward. So for next year, we're still looking at that because it did go up, but there's always a lag in that, and so it's kind of caution. Regarding that as far as estimating it moving forward in our revenues. So there's some things we have to be careful when we're projecting what we feel our revenue sources will be and how we will utilize them.
well, one good thing I see is every time a house goes on the market, it's sold in 5 minutes. So that's a good thing.
It is, and people are actually paying more than the asking price normally. So
Sure.
that is good. And if they keep selling and buying, we increase our transfer tax.
Exactly. Exactly. So I have one more question back to the per capita tax that I just thought of. I didn't go look, but do you know off the top of your head, which one of you probably does, what's a total for our for our portion of the per capita?
We receive
No?
$10. I mean, the bill has $10 for the school district. We send out 18,000, a little over 18,000 bills.
Okay.
So, I mean, if they were all, now, of course, as you know, you have many pages of exemptions, exonerations or exemptions because of people moving from one area to another or into the district or paid somewhere else or passed away recently. So, that collection is reduced. And actually, I'll show you a good place. So if you look at my favorite pages, these are my favorite pages. Then you go back to revenue and 6120 and 6141. You split the $5 among the two because they're it's 5 under each section. One's under school code and one's under Act 511. So you can see we collected about $123,000.
Okay. I mean, the only reason I was asking is, I mean, at some point, is it even worth it? I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
No, that's a discussion that I've had a few times. Dan and I just had that recently. Is it worth it? But I think he put it to me, he said, well, it's a cost of a teacher, in the end, if we take out all the extra costs of collection and paying tax collectors and time, we still will net out, enough dollars. Obviously, it's not large, but I don't have any way to replace that revenue.
I just wondered.
Yeah.
I was
but
thinking
that's-
out loud.
No, great question, because again, we think about that also.
We
right.
would be reelected every election if we did away with that tax.
Yeah, you're right. And that's just from the tax collectors, probably. They're going, yay, we don't have to do that anymore. All right, anyone have any questions on the audit?
I don't, but I have to admit, I haven't completed it, because I'm just sitting around eating bonbons instead. So I reserve my right to maybe come back with some questions because I'm only on like page 35.
Anytime. And you can email us anytime. I mean, you don't have to wait till you go through the whole thing.
Okay.
So just send us an email.
I've looked at
Happy-
various sections of it, and I learned from last year about the control deficiencies, and that was one of the first things I went to. And actually with the cafeteria, it didn't last year and the year before, we had issues with that because of the migration from one system to another and getting things straightened out. So, those
Yep.
are some, and then I was looking at some of
Yep. Excellent. No, I think that's good stuff.
the, but it doesn't excite me the same way that it does you and Sandy and Dan, I guess, If I'm suffering from insomnia, it's sitting right there next to my bed.
Yep.
As Sandy said, as questions come up, feel free, because it might be easier to handle in the moment than it is to wait for 3 pages of notes. Somebody may have sent 3 pages of questions last year, so it might be easier just to deal with as we go.
I think it might have been me. Sorry.
He was being nice.
Yep.
Fire off an email as you think about it.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, if no one has any more, do we have anything new we want to talk about?
You have 3 minutes before policy, whoever's going into policy.
So I just have one little thing. Where are we as far as looking over the contract with the attorney for the busing?
Not as far as I want to be. That is going to be, after this, the number 1 priority on my plate, because I really need to get this resolved. At least to a point that the board can review it for any additional questions. Like I said, I have the preliminary. We have not gone back to the contractor with changes that we're interested in making.
Okay.
The solicitor has had it since we received it, and I am waiting. I did talk to him maybe a week ago, just to let me know if he has any legal issues with what we have at this point. And I haven't heard back from him yet.
Okay. All right.
I have a quick
And
question.
Melanie, I just had a question about, do we want to look at any extra, I know we meet once a month as a finance committee, but do we want any extra as we're going over budget? I'm just asking to start planning,
Your night's off? No.
the 1 or 2 I have. Yeah, I need to know if I need to. So I didn't know if that was something you were, I don't know if we did any extra ones last year,
Yeah, we did.
but
We
I
did.
thought we did. So
Mhm.
just wanted to throw that out there because we're almost into February, before we know it. So
Yeah, that was part of my question as well, is last year, I guess it was last year, it was the only year I was here. It was, we had one meeting was for revenue, one meeting was for expenditures, one meeting, we kind of laid it out there. So that was going to be my question as well. Sandy, you and I haven't had that conversation, but now that thinking about it, was there an extra meeting in there, or at least the meetings that we knew, we would identify what the basic topic was. It was March this, April this, and then we could invite the board members to attend as well to make sure that they're clued in on those things once we know what the topics were. So
Yeah, I usually start off with revenue, and I'll have I was thinking definitely, and some additional items for February, because by then the state budget will be out. So I'll have that information, and you could see what it looks like. And then I'll basically have also I'll have information on some of the expenditures. And then I think from there, we can look at setting some time to move forward on all the items. And whether we, sometimes we look at, technology, like, so what's our technology plan for the following year and the impact that that will have on the budget. So I'll work with Dr. Roach in identifying areas that definitely, will have an impact on budget. And I know Ken's on full day K, was on. Full day K is something that we'll have to, identify the expenditures for that. For example, I have all the building expenses for their normal, program, K-3 in the elementaries. The additional amount will come from working with Mrs. Bass, who identify what's needed for full day K, besides the instructional staff that will be needed for that program.
Okay, so we should look at probably March, starting with some extra meetings
Yes,
when we get there. Okay,
not before.
all right. Sounds good. All right, well, can I have a motion to adjourn if we're done?
Jim.
Okay. And,
Judy's got it, I'll second.
okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I see Judy saying aye. Okay,
Yeah. I'll see you at the next meeting.
yep,
Thank you.
and thank you, everyone. Thank
Have
you.
fun at policy. Bye.
See ya. Thank you all.
Right.